We've been hearing ad nauseam this morning an important Commons committee is attacking the Brexit Secretary, David Davis. To go into the UK talks, the EU talks without a proper plan for no deal would be a dereliction of duty and grossly negligent. Mr Davis is here. Grossly negligent, Mr Davis.
Good morning. This is like Brexit Central this morning, isn't it?
It really is a bit, yes.
No, it's not. I mean, the simple truth is we have been planning for the contingency, all the various outcomes, all the possible outcomes of the
including a proper plan for no deal?
Oh yes, in terms. Indeed, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I can't remember when it was now, it was briefed out that I had spent most of the Cabinet meeting talking to the Cabinet about the importance of making sure the contingency plans were online, as well as the other plans. Now,
so
bear in mind,
do you have part of your team, as it were, round the back of the building, thinking if it doesn't work, this is what we'll have to do?
It's not just my team. It's the whole of Whitehall. It's every single department. But understand, it's the contingency plan. The aim is to get a good outcome, and we are confident. I'm confident I get a good outcome.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons we don't talk about the contingency plan too much is we don't want people to think, oh, this is what we're trying to do. That's there because we need to have it there for two reasons. One, if, as I think Crispin intimated to you earlier, the chairman of the Select Committee intimated to you earlier, it does go wrong for whatever reason. We need to be ready for that and make sure that we're in a good position to deal with that. But if we get the main outcome, it's actually quite helpful in the negotiation and in the planning for that.
For them to know that we are planning for no
for us to know, for us to be confident that we don't face, as you say, a cliff edge or something.
And in terms of the consequences of not getting a deal, again, the committee was very, very strong in its language. It said it's clear from our evidence that a complete breakdown in negotiations represents a very destructive outcome, leading to mutually assured damage for the EU and the UK. Are they right about that?
Well, I don't think, firstly, that is remotely likely, to be frank with you. Really, since the referendum, the whole government, and certainly the Foreign Office, my department, the Prime Minister's department and so on, have been engaged with every country in Europe and, of course, the institutions. And the feedback, look, it's going to be tough. Let's not make no bones about it. There will be tough points in this negotiation. But it's in absolutely everybody's interest that we get a good outcome. Ours and theirs. The obverse, if you like, of what the committee was saying. It's in their interest, in our interest. It's in Spain's interest, it's in Estonia's interest, it's in France's interest, it's in Italy's interest. Everybody has an interest in a good outcome to this.
What's your message to MPs tomorrow?
Oh, simply, look, I understand, who better to understand bluntly than the importance of parliamentary accountability? I've spent a decade of my life doing nothing but the simple, and I've said since the beginning of this exercise, look, it's inconceivable to me that there wouldn't be a vote on the outcome. But the simple truth is, what I don't want to do is take a simple bill which is designed to do nothing more than put the result of the referendum into law, as the Supreme Court told us to do. We waited for the Supreme Court to give us the detailed guidance on that. And we're going to do that. Please don't tie the Prime Minister's hands in the process of doing that for things which we expect to attain anyway.
Well, let me ask you about that vote. So the real question is, if you don't get a deal, will the Commons have a meaningful vote about what happens next?
Well, I think there's a risk with your viewers not quite understanding what's happening already. Number one, we've got the vote on Article 50 going through. Then we've got the Great Repeal Bill. All of the aspects of European law coming into UK law. A huge bill. Then we've got primary legislation and secondary legislation. And then at the end, we have a vote at the end.
What MPs say to me is, what we really want is a meaningful vote, which means that we have the ability to send David Davis and Theresa May back to the negotiating table if we don't like the deal.
First thing is, there is a limited time on this. I mean, we didn't choose the timetable. It's a 2-year time on Article 50. So there'll be a limit to which you can do that. Secondly, what we can't have is either House of Parliament reversing the decision of the British people. They haven't got a veto on...
I don't think anyone is talking about that.
Well, what does it mean otherwise? You know, people talk about meaningful vote. What does it mean otherwise? So I am quite sure there'll be votes throughout this process. There'll be a vote on the deal we strike. It will be a meaningful vote in the sense they accept it or not, just like any other international treaty.
So what happens if they don't accept it?
Well, then that is what's called the most favoured nation status deal with the World Trade Organization.
Then we go out, as it were, on
that is why, of course, we do the contingency planning to make sure that that is not harmful. But that's, this is a reality. The decision has been made The British people decided on June 23rd last year to leave the European Union. That is going to happen. My job and the job of the government is to make the terms on which that happens as beneficial as possible. And remember, we keep talking about all the sort of negative sort of stuff of protecting this, protecting that, as well as protecting our European markets. We're also going to be freed up to access all those other high-growth markets in the rest of the world, markets which we are uniquely equipped to make the best of because of our history, because of our language and so on.
So let's assume, just for the sake of argument, that you win your votes in the House of Commons tomorrow, the bill goes back to the House of Lords and they don't cause any more trouble. At that point, is that the moment when Article 50 can be triggered?
Well, in theory, it's the point at which you have royal assent, when the Queen gives her approval and the bill goes into law and becomes an act of Parliament. When it will be, I mean, people have been predicting the 6th, the 9th, the 15th.
But you want to crack on, don't you?
Of course, but I also want to pick the right day. I also want to do it in a way. Each date has different implications in terms of when it can be responded to by the Council and so on. And there's I'm not going to go into the details of why, but there's politics in terms of success, achievement,
elections,
success.
and there's all sorts of stuff. I understand that. Nonetheless, very soon we are going to trigger Article 50.
Before the end of
And my question is, what happens then?
Right. What happens then is fairly straightforward in formal terms, and whether it's straightforward in negotiated terms is another matter. But it then the letter goes to the Council. The Council then has to decide a guideline. They tell the Commission how to carry out the negotiation. That will require a meeting of the Council, which will probably take a month. We don't know for sure, but it will probably take a month, depending on how they address it, the Council without us. And then they hand that guideline back to Jean-Claude Juncker, who tells Michel Barnier, my opposite number, how to run his negotiation. Then we meet and we start. And I guess the first meeting, bluntly, will be about how we do this. How many meetings? You know, who's going to meet? Who's going to come? Specialists, generalists, whatever.
Where's it going to happen?
Where?
Yes. Is it going to be here or Brussels?
Well, mostly Brussels, I suspect. But it won't just be Brussels. I mean, you know, we've got massively strong bilateral relationships with all of our other colleagues.
This is a really important question. Is who are you really negotiating with? Is it Brussels Central, as they think, or is it leaders around the EU? Does Angela Merkel get involved, or is it you and Barnier and you until you both agree?
It's both. The formal negotiation will be between the United Kingdom government and the Commission on behalf of the 27 member states, on behalf of the Council, representing the 27 member states. But at certain points along the way, there may well come points of contention. Let's imagine that we disagree on something, we don't agree on something. I suspect at the end of the day, it will be the Council that says, OK, let's take this route.
Big beast move in at that point.
I'm guessing, because after all, it's their decision, not mine.
A really important question, because I've been talking to people on the other side as well, and they say, actually, do you know what? Britain can possibly get access, friction-free access to the single market and what they want, but there'll be a heavy financial price to pay. Do the discussions about the so-called divorce bill, the money, does that go in parallel with the other discussions, or do you have to deal with that first? As people
firstly, I mean, I think our argument's very plain. We think these things have to be done in parallel, that you can only make a judgment, as it were, at the end. The European Commission has a favourite phrase, which is nothing is agreed till everything is agreed. You know? And actually, on this occasion, I rather agree with them. You know, but that's got.
So you want to run everything in parallel.
But it may well be there's an argument over that. But let's see how it turns out.
Because they say they'd like to see how much British money they're going to get before they see how generous they're going to be on other things.
Well, first thing is, I mean, as the Chancellor said to you last week, as the Prime Minister said during the course of the week, you know, the days of giving huge sums of money are past. But
what is huge?
Well, no, I'm not. No, I'm literally. I'm not going to negotiate on air, Andrew.
Just on this point, if I may, very quickly, because it is being suggested by Boris Johnson and Michael Gove and others, and there's a story in the Sunday Times today, that actually we might be getting money back from them rather than giving money to them, and that, you know, the actual bill might be negative as far as we're concerned.
As they might say on a football programme, this is a negotiation of two halves, and there'll be bits both ways. But we'll see. I mean, look, we are not engaged yet. We haven't had a formal proposal from them yet. I mean, the thing to understand is that there's one thing which we know will be up front. One thing above all, and we get the same from the member states and from the Commission, and that's the issue of the rights of citizens, European citizens here and British citizens
that's
abroad.
of great interest to people.
And that's right up front. That's the first thing, I think.
That's the first thing you'll deal with. And will we know the result of that before the entire thing is concluded in a bit years' time?
Well, it may or may not be that it requires a treaty. I don't know. But what I think we'll know is the in-principle result. I mean, bluntly, I am reasonably sure where the in-principle result will end, because our negotiation, not a negotiation, we're not allowed to negotiate yet, but our discussions with the European Union across the board, virtually everyone I've been to see has raised that as the first issue, you know. And they all understand something, by the way, and this has got context for tomorrow, because I understand why people are concerned. I think there's a moral responsibility to European citizens too. But everybody understands that this is an issue that's got to be resolved together. Brits and Europeans together. The Polish Prime Minister, when she came here, said in terms, these issues are linked and have to be dealt together. So that's what we're going to do.
In your best guess or judgment, what is the day on which we leave the European Union?
Well, it'll be by March 2019. I mean, that's not to say there won't be some transitional implementation
But
phase.
in terms of people looking at their diaries, March 2019 is the date too.
Yeah.
OK. Let me turn to the Northern Irish question that you may have heard Jerry Adams.
Serious.
They are really, really worried about the return of the border, and particularly if we don't get a deal. What's your message back to them?
Well, my message is we have put that pretty much as our top priority. I mean, the first visit I made was to Belfast to talk about this. We have looked very closely, and we are. I mean, one of the contingency plans, if you like, or one of the plans being put together, is how on earth we create an invisible, frictionless border between North and South, between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. We have talked to the Irish government about it. The first foreign trip I made was to Dublin. They're on side. We are determined to do it. The Commissioner on side. The Commissioner, remember, had a part to play in the peace process. Indeed, Michel Barnier had a part to play in the peace process. They are absolutely determined in their mind that this is not going to go wrong. So that's the combination of determination that exists here.
When you were sitting in Cabinet on a Wednesday, did the Chancellor warn you that he was about to break an election pledge?
Oh, he told us the package he's put in front. And look, wait a minute.
Did you spot it?
I'm not going to go into detail account discussions. That will be in breach of my Privy Council oath, I suspect. But he made plain what he was going to do, and actually there was no hiding of anything. You know, everybody knew what we're talking about here.
Did everybody know that you were breaking an election pledge?
I don't know. I can't speak for anybody else.
Did you know?
I'm not going to go into the cabinet. We go around this in circles if you like.
No, I'm just asking you whether you knew that you were breaking an election
everybody's
pledge.
time. The point here is very simple. Yeah, people say to me, my job is the most difficult in government. Actually, I don't think it is. I think the Chancellor's are the most difficult. Why? Because he's still having to deal with that huge overhang of debt that comes back from 2008, from Gordon Brown's mess in 2008. Okay. Now, understand this. What he has proposed is fair in terms of the less well-off.
But breaks an election pledge.
Half of the... Yeah, but also pays...
You said yes, you agree.
No, but pays for... but pays for... You're trying to trip me up. Pays for social welfare, pays for National Health Service, all those things, which everybody wants to do. But don't say how we should pay for it.
Almost out of time. Very, very quickly. Are we going to see by-elections as a result of Conservative election fraud, alleged?
I know nothing about that at all, but I don't think so.
All right. David Davies, for now, thank you very much indeed. Now,